Episode 5. Episode 5 starts with Thony caring for Fiona's wounds, which she sustained while walking in the desert with Chris and Camilla. Thony then rushes to Lucas's room after hearing him scream. Lucas explains that he had a nightmare about the lady from Child Protective Services, Susan, taking him away, but Thony assures him that the hearing will go smoothly and that no one will separate them. However, Thony herself is not so sure and fears the worst. Meanwhile, Jorge is tracking down the source of the Devil's Breath, the drug Thony found in the truck that took Armin. His investigation leads him to Dragan, a man who frequents a construction site at 215. Jorge visits Dragan and questions him about Armin. Dragan tries to intimidate Jorge, but the latter quickly puts him in his place. Jorge also calls Thony and demands that she come to see him immediately. Thony explains she can't come today because of the meeting with Child Protective Services, but Jorge is adamant. Unfortunately, before they can extract any information from Dragan, he dies due to Dante's torture. Ramona is unhappy about this kidnapping and torture thing and asks Jorge to ensure that Nadia receives her insurance money to pay off Armin's abductors. Trouble arises for Thony when Luca goes missing from the house, and despite their efforts, they cannot find him. In fear and desperation, Thony calls Jorge, suspecting that Ramona might have taken her son. However, Jorge believes that Ramona would never do such a thing. Meanwhile, the CPS worker, Susan, arrives at the house and asks to see Lucas. Thony tries to stall by saying Lucas is with his aunt. However, Susan senses that something is amiss and warns Thony to be honest, as it could affect Lucas' custodial hearing. JD informs Susan about Dante, leading to an Amber Alert being issued against him, and soon Dante is then arrested by the police. Elsewhere, Jorge visits Ramona to inquire about Lucas's disappearance, but she claims she has no knowledge of it. Thony finally reveals to Fiona that it was the Sin Cara cartel who helped her bring Fiona and Chris back to America. Fortunately, Luca is found. It turns out he had snuck outside the house, fearing that Susan would separate him from Thony. Thony informs Susan about Luca being found, but Susan explains that she still needs to mention this to the judge. Thony fears that CPS will use this mishap to try to separate Lucas from her. However, this is the least of Tony's problems, as they have booked Dante on undisclosed charges. Despite the challenges, thanks to the testimony of her family members and Jorge, the judge allows Thony to keep her son. Jorge also uses his influence to remove the Amber Alert from the system. With the Amber Alert gone, the police are forced to drop all charges against Dante. Unfortunately, Dante was the contact person for the people who abducted Armando. His arrest prevents him from making contact for the exchange, leaving Jorge and Ramona clueless about Armando's fate. Jorge meets Thony and warns her to stay away from Ramona, as it could end badly for both Thony and Lucas. The episode review. No matter what Thony does, it seems like her troubles just keep piling up, whether it's because of her own actions or someone else's. She's been allowed to keep her kid, but the judge gave her a serious warning. If there are any issues with how Thony is taking care of her son, he could be taken away and put into foster care. But since Thony's caught up with the cartel, not by choice, that's bound to create even more problems for her. And did you see Jorge's face when Thony hugged her son? It seemed like there might be a romance brewing between them.